Why is everyone hating Greta Thunberg again? Well, ever since the news about her joining the Freedom Flotilla broke out, there have been several news pieces and tweets and social media content either supporting her or criticizing. From angry tweets to smear pieces to even veiled threats, she's getting it from all sides. But the thing is, it's always been like this, especially in the past few years, ever since she switched from talking just about climate to talking about the entire corrupted capitalist system and colonialism that are so closely tied to the climate crisis that we're facing now. She's not just a climate activist anymore. She's a full-fledged moral rebel. A revolutionary even, and that makes her dangerous. Because for those in power, people like Greta aren't just annoying, they are real threats. They're extremely dangerous because they're like beacons of hope and humanity that are reminding us that we can be better if we put our collective effort towards this.
We cannot afford to give up. There is simply too much at stake. And in times of injustice, as we are seeing now, the genocide and blockade happening, we have to do everything we can to demand an end to these atrocities and war crimes committed by Israel. And for me personally, I happen to have a platform for some reason, and then it is my moral obligation to use that platform. And if my presence on this vote can make a difference, if that can show in any way that the world has not forgotten about Palestine, and to try once again to attempt to break the siege and open up the humanitarian corridor and deliver the extremely needed humanitarian aid, then that is a risk I'm willing to take, and it's something that we just simply have to do. We cannot just sit around and do nothing and watch this live stream genocide unfold in front of our very eyes.
So in this video, I will talk about why the world treats voices like hers with so much hostility and fear. Let's dive straight into this.
How dare you! You have stolen my dreams, my childhood, with your empty words. And yet, I'm one of the lucky ones.
Genocide is upon Gaza, and at this point it's an undeniable fact that even some right-wing governments have confirmed. Take, for example, the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, who was denying it a few months ago. In desperate attempts to seek food, numerous Palestinians have been killed in the past days as Israel soldiers fired into starving crowds. But we can also see international pressure mounting, and now an aid ship is about to attempt to break through Israel's blockade. Governments are also starting to act. Ireland proposed a bill banning imports from illegal Israeli settlements, the Netherlands pushed the EU to review its trade deal with Israel, and the UK paused trade talks and imposed sanctions on some Israeli settlers. And in this context, Greta Thunberg is doing something extremely brave. She's risking her life to deliver food aid to Gaza. While critics are screaming Hamas sympathizer from their air-conditioned studios, Greta has joined the Freedom Flotilla coalition, an international group of human rights activists trying to break Israel's illegal blockade on Gaza by delivering humanitarian aid by sea, in real boats. It's not a metaphor. Freedom Flotilla has tried repeatedly over the past 15 years to sail boats with aid and medical supplies to Gaza, which Israel has blockaded by sea since 2007. The most recent attempt was earlier in May 2025, when the ship Conscious was struck by Israeli drones near Malta.
First, we'll attempt to again sail towards Gaza and to try to break the siege and open up a humanitarian corridor by delivering aid like food and medical supplies. The last time we attempted this, about a month ago, the boat Conscience that we were about to board, just a couple of hours before we were planning to board and set sail, it got bombed twice, and all evidence suggests that it was Israel who did it.
Oh my God.
So now we are here in Catania, outside of Sicily, to try to continue our mission to try again. Because currently we are watching a systematic starvation of 2 million people, a live stream genocide, and the world's silence is deadly. That is why we have to keep trying everything we can, even if the odds are against us, to try to protest and do everything we can to stand against Israel's atrocities and war crimes and to support and stand in solidarity with the people of Palestine.
It's expected that they will take 7 days to reach their destination if they're not stopped. And even if they don't reach Gaza, they expect that they will raise enough awareness about this horrifying events that are happening in Gaza. All the volunteers, including Greta's presence, brings visibility to the mission. Visibility that could save a lot of lives, but it also naturally paints a target on their backs. In an age where drones can strike journalists or aid workers with zero accountability, the likelihood of something terrible happening is very high. But of course, Greta and all the other volunteers know it perfectly well, because she's not just trend chasing. We have seen throughout all of these years that she has continuously stood up for what she believes in, supporting indigenous resistance, marching for climate justice, criticizing the Azerbaijani government for its war in Artsakh and the inconsistencies at COP, and now amplifying the voices of Palestinians that really need it. Her activism is intersectional, consistent, and increasingly global. Because when a moral voice like hers refuses to stay in one assigned lane like climate, gender, geography, power structures start freaking out. And that's what happened with the backlash in social media.
How dare you! You have stolen my dreams.
It has been absolutely vicious. First, Arsen Ostrovsky, who is a pro-Israeli lobbyist who brands himself as a human rights advocate, because apparently anyone can take that title nowadays, he tweeted, "Oh look, the little jihadi Greta Thunberg is trying to get into Gaza to show solidarity with Hamas. It would be so sad if something were to happen to her flotilla."
Huh?
Are you kidding me? Because let's pause for a second, that's a veiled threat. Coming from someone who is supposedly working in the field of human rights. This is absolutely insane to me. Putting aside the fact that international law is in absolute shambles, it seems, at this point it's just a Zionist rights advocate. But then, of course, there's more. There's this US Senator Lindsey Graham who tweeted,
"A US senator just threatened Greta Thunberg. In response to an article about how Greta is sailing to Gaza on a ship trying to deliver humanitarian aid, Lindsey Graham tweeted, 'Hope Greta and her friends can swim.' This threat is not rhetorical. It comes 1 month after Israel did POW another ship from this group that was in the Mediterranean on the way to Gaza.
But it's not just attention-seeking tweets from fake politicians who are just there for money. Greta is also facing a lot of criticism from governments and media. Her coverage has visibly changed ever since she started criticizing Israel. Suddenly the media is calling it the sad tragedy of Greta Thunberg, or criticizing her for her irrational hatred against Israel, or trying to cause some division among her supporters, claiming that her support of Gaza threatens her climate activism. Basically, all of these huge media outlets and 60-year-old politicians are suddenly accusing, attacking, hating on a young girl. How old is she? 22 years old. She doesn't have an army or lots of money, but she does have a lot of influence. She's young, principled, she cannot be bought, and worst of all, she gets people to listen, and that terrifies the status quo. I know she has not turned away from climate activism like many critics claim. She is more engaged in it than ever, because the thing is that climate, colonialism, and capitalism are inextricable.
It's so weird to me that people are separating caring about the environment and the climate to caring about humans. Like, I care about the environment and the climate because I care about human and planetary well-being. Those are the same thing in my view. We are standing up for justice and for sustainability, for liberation for everyone. There can be no climate justice without social justice.
Greta and the climate movement in the past decade has realized how closely climate change is tied to greedy corporations under the capitalistic system that is prioritizing growth over human lives and the survival of our planet.
How dare you! You have stolen my dreams.
So what happens when you stand up against justice so clearly, persistently, and without apology? Well, we can ask Rosa Parks, we can ask Ken Saro-Wiwa, and many other activists that operated in spaces of social change and upheaval, typically situated at historical action points. We teach school children that Rosa Parks sparked a movement, but in 1955 she wasn't praised. She was fired from her job and called a criminal. The New York Times at the time didn't even cover her arrest. Civil rights leaders begged her not to make trouble. But today she's a national icon for the Americans, while back then she was a disturber of peace. Or let's take Ken Saro-Wiwa, a Nigerian writer and activist who dared to expose how Shell and the Nigerian military were poisoning the lands of the Ogoni people. For that, he was arrested, tortured, and hanged in 1995 after a fake trial. He was honored by the UN, Amnesty International, and universities across the globe only after his death. But he died branded a terrorist under the government. Unfortunately, history shows that this is the cycle that moral voices go through. First they get dismissed, and then they get demonized, and if they don't shut up, then they get locked up, or worse. And only years later, when their voices can no longer threaten power and the social change that they have been fighting for has finally happened, they get a street named after them. And if you're a woman, it's even worse, because according to the UN Human Rights Office, women human rights activists are among the primary targets of online hate, violence, and disinformation. Misogyny isn't a collateral damage, it's most often a tactic. It's a method of silencing and pressuring again and again. And we can see that just looking at Greta Thunberg. She's not just criticized, she's demeaned, infantilized, sexualized, and threatened with violence. Also, can we talk about the fact how common it has become to threaten women with violence with no accountability, all while being told to smile more? And it's all because Greta is a true rebel, a revolutionary, and what she represents is way bigger than climate change. She's a challenge to the entire value system that our world is constructed on. In The Rebel by my favorite Albert Camus, he defines the rebel as someone who says no to injustice and by doing so says a deeper, stronger yes to human dignity. Rebellion is the assertion of a value in the face of a world that denies it. With rebellion, awareness is born, Camus writes. Greta's rebellion isn't just political, it's moral, it's existential. She's not just proposing small tweaks to the emissions curves. She's rejecting a worldview that values GDP over life, extraction over regeneration, and silence over truth. Camus writes, "The rebel only kills men. The revolutionary kills both men and principles." Just like what Greta is doing now, the rebel doesn't just attack a system, it exposes its dark soul. And that's what makes her extremely dangerous. It reminds me of the quote by Fanon in The Wretched of the Earth. "Every generation must discover its mission, fulfill it, or betray it." And Greta and our generation overall, we have found our mission. We have found what doesn't work for us and for the entire humanity, for our planet, and we want to make it right. But of course, the machinery of power is doing everything now so that Greta and other voices of conscience can betray the mission that we've identified by mockery, discreditation, and threats. But history tells us something else. In The Politics of Nonviolent Action, Sharp writes, "The violence of the opponent's repression is exposed in the worst possible light, leading to shifts in public opinion and power relationships in favor of the nonviolent group." In other words, creating martyrs like Greta is a very bad PR for the current system. A lot of people worry incredibly about the high risk of her being killed, especially now that she's approaching Gaza. If someone like Greta gets killed, and let's hope it does not happen, it will create a huge backlash. Just like Sharp claims, it will brutally expose the current system. People will see it for what it is, a money-hungry, bloody machine. That's why so far they've only been trying to assassinate her character instead, by trying to create division, targeting her climate activism, or infantilizing her. And the power structures will continue attacking her just like that, trying their best to silence her and to ignore the issues at hand. Samantha Power, in A Problem from Hell, describes why genocides are so often ignored. Policymakers overemphasize the ambiguity of the facts. They feared that calling it genocide would create a moral imperative to act. And this is the issue. Governments, corporations, they do not like when their moral imperative is evoked, when they are basically called immoral for their inaction. When Greta speaks plainly and very clearly, institutions rush to make it complicated, because truth like that demands courage. And unfortunately, there's very little courage among those who have something to lose. But just like Sharp also points out, it is crucial and absolutely imperative for us to keep withstanding increasing repression. Without the willingness to face repression, the nonviolent action movement cannot hope to succeed. When courageous figures like Greta Thunberg expose power structures in the worst possible light, this may lead to shifts in opinion and then to shifts in power relationships favorable to the nonviolent group. These shifts result from withdrawal of support for the opponent and the grant of support to the nonviolent actionists. And this is what moral voices like Greta are fighting for, because history is a graveyard of vilified prophets that turn into heroes post-mortem. So the question isn't really whether Greta will be remembered. It's more about what we can do now to support her and to spread further her voice. There's a wonderful quote by Francesca Albanese about the current situation in Palestine and what it represents for the entire humanity and all the different struggles that we're fighting for. Nowadays, Palestine is the litmus test of our humanity. It calls us to eradicate and gain a deeper understanding of the imperial, colonial, and capitalistic roots that have embedded the international system since its birth, including its international law framework. So, where does this leave us? In a world where lies keep the machinery of wars, climate distraction, exploitation, truth is very dangerous. It's an act of bravery and rebellion to speak up. Students, politicians, journalists get attacked, punished, deported, killed for speaking up. We're living through absolutely horrid, overlapping emergencies, but being told to look away. In May 2024, for example, the world experienced its hottest May on record. Again, meanwhile, in Gaza, the death toll surpassed 35,000 people, the majority of whom are civilian women and children. Whole families, entire bloodlines are being wiped out. And when people are trying to speak up about it, they are silenced, censored, blacklisted. We see all of these terrible things happening, but when we see governments passing anti-protest laws, universities calling cops on students or deporting them, media outlets firing journalists for saying ceasefire or genocide, it's natural for people to get scared, to speak up and take a step back. And that's exactly why we need courageous people like Greta Thunberg to lead us, to inspire us, to show that standing up for truth is the morally right thing to do. And what we can do is to support their cause and be grateful for their willingness to sacrifice their own lives for something that is important for the entire humanity. The times that we're living in are very difficult. The fact that we have to utter words like genocide and climate crisis are quite depressing. They signal how dire everything has become. But what we can do and what we have always done as humanity is to remain hopeful and keep fighting. I see more and more people around me starting to wake up and to take action, because once you see injustice, climate, genocide, corruption, you really can't unsee it. And once you stop apologizing for seeing and speaking up against it, then you become dangerous, especially to those who depend on our blindness. As pointed out by Fanon in The Wretched of the Earth, the political education of the masses is seen to be a historic necessity. That's why we need to keep supporting, educating ourselves and people around us, and keep fighting for what we believe is right. And if we're lucky, Greta Thunberg won't be a martyr. She will just be a very brave soul that hopefully will live a long life. She'll see the world that she has helped to create, and she'll keep being the yes in a world of no's. And just for that, she deserves not our mockery, but our solidarity and support. Thank you so much for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. As always, I love starting discussions and learning from you guys. So yeah, see you in the next video, and thank you for watching. Bye!